can you use this as a launching pad to redesign your life? That sometimes we need our breakdown to get our breakthrough. Sometimes the experiences, whether we meant to or not, whether it happened accidentally or happened as a result of somebody else, sometimes life handed us something that we didn't want, we didn't think we needed, but we can decide that we can do something with it, or we can redirect our lives. So where's the opportunity now that you're here on this part of your journey? I'm Jackie Hall, and this is Beneath Behaviour, where we break down stress, reactions, and get to the heart of why we all do the things we do. We'll have real conversations, find real solutions, and have absolutely no judgment. Let's talk. Hey guys, welcome back to the Beneath Behaviour podcast. I'm super excited about this episode because the last couple of weeks we've been talking a lot about what I call rolling in the mud, which is where we're kind of talking about all the stress that we're experiencing and all of the different mindset viewpoints that we often look through that tell a story about what's happening in our lives. It's triggering our stress. And we've been talking about something called the 4 stressful thinking lenses that we all look through when we're feeling stressed. And it's not so much about rolling around in that mud in that narrative, but how we can change that narrative and feel differently about parenting and thus end up behaving differently. Because, I'd read all the books, I'd done all the things that I thought were right, but it was actually the thinking that was the problem, because I could change everything on externally and change my behaviors. But at the end of the day, inside me, I was still feeling angry, frustrated, overwhelmed, guilty, shameful, not good enough, all of those horrible feelings that were stacking on top of one another and triggering anxiety, depression, and, all of those emotions. So today is really about helping you to start changing that mindset. So before we jump into how you can do that, let's first revisit, for those of you who haven't listened to it or understand them, what those 4 stressful thinking lenses are. Now, in a nutshell, we all have this kind of idea of how life is supposed to look. This can be on a minor level or a major level. We can be have expectations on a day-to-day basis or a minute-to-minute basis. We wake up in the morning, we have an expectation about how the morning's going to go, how I'm going to be organized, what's going to happen for my day as I'm, going to work or doing whatever I do throughout my day. I'll have ideas or pictures of how that pathway is going to go. We can have ideas about ourselves, an identity about who I feel like I need to be in order to be good enough, in order to be accepted, appreciated, approved of. We'll have all of these kind of pictures going on. We'll have a life picture or several life pictures that says my life pathway needs to go in a certain way for me to feel good or to feel good enough. We'll have ideas on how we think our child's life needs to go for their life to be purposeful. We will have ideas from our experiences of what went wrong that help us to try to get things to go right so that we don't have to experience those negative or unwanted experiences ever again. So basically, there is like an endless list of pictures that we have in our mind of this kind of idea of this right path that we're expecting to go on. And so the first lens is this recognition that our brain is doing this right versus wrong. It's looking at what's right, it's judging what's wrong, and it's always going to do that because we always have this thinking, judging brain, which needs to do this for survival, to check whether we're okay or whether there's something that needs to be adapted in our environment so that we can be okay either emotionally or physically. So it's not about trying to stop this right versus wrong lens. It's just being aware of it and aware of whether it's actually rating that experience correctly, because the other lenses will manipulate and worm their way into, change the way that you view what's happening in your world, because your picture might be different to what you expected it to be, but you're going to have a whole narrative about what that means. So the first lens is this right versus wrong. The second is the missing out lens, that once we notice that life isn't going to plan, we start to look for evidence of how do we know that life isn't going to plan? Oh, well, look at all the things that I'm missing out on. Firstly, I'm missing out on the experience that I think I'm supposed to have in order for life to be going right. Secondly, I could be missing out on love or respect or appreciation, or there can be some sort of lack in my life or some sort of void. We can be doing this in many different areas. We can be doing it in the area of parenting, general life, relationships, career. There's lots of different ways that these lenses can play out, and they can play out differently and have different pictures associated with them. So the idea is that we're being aware of when we're going into this right versus wrong, this missing out lens. The next lens is where the logic and reasoning part of the brain kicks in and says, well, why am I on this wrong path? Why am I missing out on life not going to plan? And it reasons because I or someone else should have behaved differently. So they should have known better. They should have made a different decision. They should have respected me more and therefore behaved differently. Or maybe I should have. So some people are in the blame of me camp. The other people are in the blame of someone else camp. So they should be behaving differently. I should be behaving differently. I should know better. I should have done it differently. I should already have this information or know how to control my life better. And then those first three lenses always spiral down into the core belief that I am worth less in some way. Now, worthlessness will mean different things to different people. It can just mean that my day is crappy and I'm making some sort of value judgment on the experience that I'm having. For some people, it'll be that I actually do feel completely worthless. I feel like my life is worthless, and I have all of this evidence of why that feels like it's so true. And that's a really important point to remember about these lenses too. And I know that some of you have been watching episode 2 and 3, but I think it's important to keep thinking about how these different lenses show up in your life, because they're everywhere. Whenever you're feeling any kind of stress, all 4 of those lenses are going to be there. So get really good at understanding how that story is being narrated in your mind to be triggering those unwanted emotions or those difficult emotions that you're experiencing. So we can be feeling that sense of worthlessness in minor ways, medium ways, or major ways, and we can feel them in one area of our life but not in another. So the level of stress will indicate the level of worthlessness or self-worth attachment you have to that picture you believed was going to be your right path. So as the episodes unfold, you're going to get more and more familiar with examples of how those lenses unfold. But it's equally important, and this is the whole point of this episode, is to know how to change that narrative. Because awareness, yes, is 50% of change, but then the other 50% is what we do with that awareness. So once we become aware of this narrative, this story that we run and how it influences our feelings, not just about parenting, but about life in general, we then have to know how to change them. So today I want to introduce you to what I call the upgrades, where we've got 4 upgrades to counteract the 4, excuse my nails, time to go to the nail salon, right? 4 upgrades to meet the 4 lenses. So reminding you that the first lens is right versus wrong. The idea that there's a right path and a wrong path. If I'm on the right path, I'm ticking all the boxes of all the things that I feel are going right in my life, or I'm matching the picture of how I think it's supposed to go. And I'm judging things that don't meet that picture as wrong in my life. So you can be moving along your life, ticking all the boxes. Yep, that's all good. And then one thing happens, or several things start to stack up on top of each other that cause you to start to think about how life is now not going to plan. It can be that this situation is not going to plan, my week's not going to plan, my month's not going to plan, but after a while of finding evidence, and that's an important point too, is that your mind will be finding a lot of evidence and will have stacked up lots of evidence of experiences in your life. So if you have been feeling stressed for a long time, your memory bank is going to be full of reference points that try to justify how accurate your thinking is, that this perception of this right versus wrong, yeah, my life is going wrong. It's a perception because you have an idea of how life is supposed to go. The reality is that life isn't going that way. So what we need to do is recognize, and I spoke about this in one of my episode 2 or 3, I can't remember which one, that emotional stress is a conflict between belief and reality. And so meaning that the reality is what's happening in front of you. So if life is different to the picture of what you had in mind or what you thought you needed for your life to be valuable, and life is different, that difference is your reality. We don't have to like our reality, but we do need to accept it so we can do something about it and feel differently about it. Now, I know that that's really hard. So I'm by no means trivializing any of the experiences that anybody has gone through. And please know that when I'm saying all of this, it sounds super easy, right? All the things that I'm telling you are like all these upgrades. They're not going to be like earth shattering. They're not going to kind of rock your world. They're not going to be things that you know that you've never heard before, right? But what it's going to do is give you a framework for looking for evidence of those upgrades to counteract the evidence that you have of those stressful thinking lenses. So you'll have over the years, or the days, the months, the years, the decades, the amount of time that you've been feeling this level of stress and over different things, you'll have a load of evidence that supports that narrative. So these upgrades, you're going to have to find a lot of evidence that support those upgrades to the emotional degree that it helps you to believe them, because that's how the stressful thinking lenses were set up in the first place. So when we think through those stressful thinking lenses, our thinking is in conflict with reality. The reality is what's in front of us. The conflict is the story that we're telling ourselves about it. That's what's triggering your stress. It's not about the event that triggers your stress. It's how you perceive that event and what you perceive it to mean about you. That's personalizing it. That's that self-worth attachment to that story. So we're needing to upgrade those 4 lenses. And the first upgrade to the right versus wrong is understanding that life is a story of ups and downs. Now, when we look at this idea of this right versus wrong, we tend to have adopted this picture, whether it's indoctrinated by society or family, or we've just adopted this belief somehow, that my life should go in this straight line. So we have this perception of the straight line, but the reality is that life is constantly doing this, right? So that's where our conflict with reality is. We expect that life's going to go to plan. We expect that when we become parents that we're going to know exactly what to do, and that our kids are going to behave, and they're never going to fight, and they're always going to listen to us when they're getting ready in the morning, or they're always going to follow a great pathway. We're going to have lots of finances to be able to support them and give them everything that they need. And we'll have all of these naive expectations of this warm and fuzzy vision of our life because we'll want for the best. But the reality is that sometimes life goes to plan and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there's good, sometimes there's bad. Sometimes there's wanted, sometimes there's unwanted. Sometimes life goes to plan and sometimes it doesn't. So we need to start looking for that reality. We need to find evidence of the fact that if we look back in our whole history, if you're in a stressful thinking lens mindset and you're looking for all the things that are going wrong in your life, you might try to draw upon all of that evidence that life has always gone wrong. And that's all you'll see, because your mind only finds evidence of what you have your attention on. So you'll start to look back in your history and you'll go, this has gone wrong, this has gone wrong, this has gone wrong, this has gone wrong. But if I asked you to go from here to your local shopping center and count all of the red cars, and then when you get to the shopping center, I ask you how many yellow ones there are, you won't be able to tell me because you were only focused on the red ones. So if you keep looking for all the things that are going wrong in your day, in your week, in your month, in your life, that's what you're going to find. But if you start looking for all the things that did go to plan, then you're going to start to notice them too. And if you literally did a timeline of your life, and it may not be even, you might see that some things went to plan, some things didn't go to plan. Even if there were some major things that didn't go to plan, and that's part of a life story as well, your unique life story, you're still going to find some highs in that. To remember and remind yourself that whatever's happening right now in your life is not the be all and end all of your life story. Remember that saying, this too shall pass? It always passes. Everything rises and passes away, like everything in life. You look around you, every experience comes and goes, every emotion comes and goes, every thought comes and goes. Everything has a shelf life. So we have to recognize that when your children are going through challenging times, you don't know that's going to be forever. A lot of parents worry about their children's future, but the reality of your child's future is that it's going to be full of highs and lows, just like your life is, just like every life is. We're here to live and learn. The reality, and this is what we got to keep coming back to when we're using these upgrades. Remember I said in the last episode, or if you're only hearing it for the first time, when I used to get caught up in those stressful thinking lenses, one of the first things I'd say is, Jack, you're in conflict with reality. The reality is ... whatever that reality is. So what are you going to do about it? So that I would pull myself out of that story by remembering you're in conflict with reality. And we used to have a plaque when the kids were little that one of my clients at one of the retreats I worked at did up for us. And it said, you're in conflict with reality. And I remember when I was teaching this concept to my kids, my youngest son, Ryan, we would be giving that to him all the time because his mindset was constantly in conflict with reality. And even now, occasionally as adults, they'll be going on about something and I'll go, Rye, you're in conflict with reality, mate. Like the reality is blah, blah, blah. And you can roll around in your pit of as much as you like. But the reality is not going to change by you doing that. And all that's going to happen is that you're going to use all of your energy finding evidence of that story that you're not going to have the energy or the attention span to look at that situation differently and to look for a solution in that situation. So when you put that into a parenting context, if we're looking at all the things that we're doing wrong in parenting, we're looking at all the ways the kids' lives are going wrong, all the way other areas of our lives are going wrong, you're not looking for what's going well. You're not looking for what's working. You're not looking for what you are capable of, what you have achieved in your life. You're not looking for any of opportunities that may be presented or may be available to you because you're stuck in the stressful thinking lenses. So the first thing we've got to realize is that it doesn't last forever. It's just part of the highs and lows of life, and that there is an end to this, like there always has been. And we need to find evidence of that you may not know when it's ending or how it's going to end, but it will. There will be times that things are going to go to plan. And when you're going through something really tough, for example, let's say that your child is going through a particular stage in their life or a particular challenging time in their life that doesn't have an immediate fix, that it might just take some time to teach them some certain things or to practice some certain things or to put something in place to support them. During that struggle or those challenges, we have to make sure that you're also looking at what else is going on in your life, that maybe this thing that's happening isn't going to plan and there isn't an immediate solution for it. But where are the opportunities to have fun in between those moments, to enjoy in between those moments, to find connection or find some other opportunity in that moment? That's what we want to be using that upgrade for, is to be looking at all of the highs, lows, good, bad, wanted, unwanted, and just see it as one complete story. That when you're 80-something years old, you're going to look back on your life and you're just going to see it as a series of experiences. Some that I want, some that I don't want, some that were good, some that were bad, some that were, enjoyable, some that were not. And it's just going to be your life story. So we have to accept the reality that life is going to have its highs and lows so that we can do something about it. Now, something I want to add about these upgrades is just like those stressful thinking lenses, they don't go 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't just go wrong path, missing out, could have, should have, worth less. Sometimes it can be 2, 4, 3, 1. Like it's just one big story full of those 4 lenses, right? The upgrades are going to be the same. I'm teaching them individually. However, they will mesh together to be just one big story once you start to learn them all. And this is, by the way, something that we teach in our programs. Just about every program that I run teaches these lenses and upgrades so that you can get an awareness of that. So if you're interested in doing our programs, then just jump onto our website, parentalstresscenter.com, so you can have a look at these programs and look at, which one's relevant to you, whether it's teaching your children these upgrades or teaching yourself these upgrades, or both. So the first one is life is a story of ups and downs. The second one is the upgrade to the missing out lens. Now, this was personally one that I had to train myself to do because the missing out lens was my dominant lens. Even though all four of them are always there, we often have a dominant lens, and the missing out one was mine. So I would look for all the things that I didn't have, all the things that were lacking in me. It was just, missing out lens, missing out lens, missing out lens. And what was really interesting is that my younger son, Ryan, he had a really strong missing out lens. So I spent years reversing his missing out lens, which helped me to reverse my missing out lens. So I'm interested, as I'm talking about this, let me know in the comments what you think your dominant lens is that needs the most work. And what's interesting is sometimes people go, oh, I don't relate to the worthless lens, but it's often their most dominant lens once we start digging into their stories. Not always, but a lot of the time, the one that you think you don't resonate with the most is probably the one that is your dominant lens. So just be aware of that. So the second upgrade to the missing out lens is recognizing that everything has value. Let's not mistake unwanted or unenjoyable experiences as being worthless experiences. Now, it may not be what you want, but it may actually be what you or your child need. Because, and I say that very carefully, because there are experiences that moralistically you do not need and you should not have to have gone through or experienced. So this isn't, sometimes with some certain situations and some sort of experiences, these upgrades still apply, but they just need to be weaved in a little bit more sensitively. So if you're trying to apply them to something bigger, then you might need a little bit more kind of one-on-one assistance from a professional, like a psychologist or a counselor. I don't do one-on-ones. I have done in the past, but I'm dedicating a lot of my time to kind of teaching this information so that I can kind of reach more people. So if you need to go in depth with it a little bit more, it might be that you're doing that on a one-on-one basis. If you're working through some kind of bigger issues, those lenses will still apply. Those upgrades will still need to be applied. They'll be taught slightly differently by other people, but at the end of the day, it is changing that mindset to perceive those things differently, so you can accept the reality that should it have happened? No. But the reality is it did, and we need to have a look at how we can not necessarily change how you see that situation happening, but how you now decide to see your life now that it has happened. So we want to have a look at how you can draw from our unwanted experiences. What can we learn from it is one of the things. That's the most obvious one, that there's often a lesson that builds our character, changes who we are, teaches us what to do, teaches us what not to do. So our mistakes that we make can be lessons in life. That can be valuable that I made that mistake because now I know what not to do. And sometimes we have to learn the hard way. We have to learn experientially in order to change what we do as we go on. And this is part of life's ups and downs, is that we're constantly learning and changing and upgrading our knowledge and doing better because we've learned better. So we have to recognize that this is happening for us and this is happening for our kids. Because the great thing about these upgrades is as you start adopting them yourself, you're going to automatically start to speak these upgrades to your kids. So the second one is looking at has value. And the evidence of that is looking for what have I learnt? Where is the hidden good in the bad? That sometimes, even though I didn't get what I wanted, I got something else. So I can focus on that. Firstly, what have I learned? Secondly, is there a hidden good in the bad? Thirdly, where's the opportunity that even though I didn't get what I wanted or I experienced something terrible or unwanted, what can I do with that now? Sometimes our biggest adversities have allowed us to make meaning out of our life and chosen to do something with that experience that maybe helps other people or took us in a different direction, made us make different decisions, set different goals. If you haven't done that or it hasn't naturally led you to that, can you use this as a launching pad to redesign your life? that sometimes we need our breakdown to get our breakthrough. Sometimes the experiences, whether we meant to or not, whether it happened accidentally or happened as a result of somebody else, sometimes life handed us something that we didn't want, we didn't think we needed, but we can decide that we can do something with it, or we can redirect our lives. So where's the opportunity now that you're here on this part of your journey? Because you don't have to like what happened. You don't have to agree with what happened. You can dislike that person. You can do whatever you want with that. But the reality is you are here in this part of your life. What can we do next? So where's the opportunity in that? And then the other aspect of it, similar to what I was saying about if there is no solution right now and there is nothing that you can do about this particular situation, whatever it is, then what can you be grateful for? There are always things that you can be grateful for. And one of the best antidotes to the missing out lens is gratitude. Find tiny things that you appreciate. Now, what's interesting about these upgrades is we often think we have to think of big things, but just like little things stack up with those stressful thinking lenses to trigger big stress, little things can stack up on the upgrades that cause us to alleviate stress. So we can look for little things that we appreciate and remember what that feels like. A cup of coffee, warm sun, favorite song, listening to something that makes you feel good. Those sorts of things help you to lift how you feel, to see that other things in life are going well, even though this crappy thing over here might be really tough right now and really challenging. So you need to challenge that mindset that just wants to go into wrong path, missing out, could have, should have, and worthless. They're not wrong. It's not a wrong way to think. It's about cause and effect. If I think through the stressful thinking lenses, I'll feel stressed or some sort of emotion that's difficult. If I think through the upgrades, then I will alleviate that stress. I will feel differently. But it's about finding evidence of these upgrades. The evidence is what's going to trigger the emotion in you to feel better, because you're not going to be so bogged down. And I use the term alleviate stress because we're not trying to dismiss emotions. We're not trying to shove them under the carpet here. We're just trying to help alleviate them by recognizing that if I'm going through something difficult and I don't yet have a solution for it, I'm in the process of my life. It's not going wrong. I'm just having an experience. It's might be something that it's unwanted or unexpected, but it's just another experience on your journey. And there's going to be some sort of value in it. And if I can look for the value in this experience, or just look for the value in my life in general, or see the gratitude in my life in general, aside of this bad things that's going on, or this thing that I don't want that's going on that I can't change. If you can't see anything remotely positive about this experience, just start by seeing things outside of that experience to at least remind you that what's happening here is not the whole picture of what's going on in your life. There are always other things that we can enjoy, or other opportunities that we can pursue deliberately to enjoy things. So that's the second upgrade, is everything has value. The third upgrade can be a tricky one, and it does need to be a lot of discussion. There will be a lot of discussion when we jump into the world of your children when we get to it. But the third stressful thinking lenses is this should have, could have. This is where the blame kicks in. I should have done something different, or they should have done something different. So what we need to do is the upgrade is priority beliefs dictate behavior. Now, this requires you to understand a little bit about how we choose to behave the way that we do. We will have a list of options of all the things that we think we need to do in a given situation. So let's say, for example, that your child sees a container of biscuits or cookies, that some people might refer to better, on the counter. And you've said to them, do not eat those cookies. And you've walked out of the room, and your child's sitting there going, do I eat the cookies or do I not eat the cookies? The child has two choices, right? Which one of those choices is going to be their priority beliefs? So the priority belief is going to dictate the behavior, but the priority belief that's activated in that moment is the most important part of that upgrade. The upgrade is priority beliefs dictate behavior in that moment. Because in that moment, your child can assess that situation and say, right, mum's out of the room or dad's out of the room. There's nobody here. There's 20 biscuits or cookies in that jar. They're not going to notice one missing. I reckon I can't hear them. So I reckon I'm going to be able to get over there, get one out, eat one, put the lid back on, put it back, and no one's even going to know. So they may have two stories. So one story saying that, the other story saying you shouldn't eat that cookie because mum said no and we don't want to get in trouble, right? So we've got two stories, two narratives about whether I should eat the cookie or not eat the cookie, right? It's kind of like the good angel and the devil sitting on your shoulder, right? Arguing with each other. Now, whichever one they choose will be the priority belief in that moment. And the priority belief will always be dictated by what's going to give me the most pleasure and avoid the most pain. It's that kind of survival mechanism. So in that moment, the child thinks, no one's around, no one's going to know, I'm going to do it. So that's the priority belief in that moment, because the desire to have the cookie outweighs the potential that I'm going to get in trouble. On the other side of things, let's say we put that on a set of scales. So let's say that the decision to eat the cookie weighs 5 kilos and the decision not to eat the cookie weighs 2 kilos. Let's say we put those two options out of the brain. One weighs 2 kilos, one weighs 5 kilos, and we put it on a set of scales. Can the scales choose to tip the other way? Think about that for a minute. If I have weight on scales, those old-fashioned scales that kind of do this seesaw effect. I know I'm showing my age. It's okay. Bear with me. If we have a set of scales, one weighs 5 kilos, one weighs 2 kilos, can the scales choose to tip the other way? And the answer is no. The scales have to swing in the direction of the heaviest option. And the heaviest option in this moment says, no one's around. I want that cookie. I can do it. So in that moment, that's the story. The child can't choose differently unless they had a different set of information. So let's say 2 moments later, let's say 2 minutes has passed, and the child tries to assess the same situation, but can hear that mum or dad are on the phone in another room, but they're about to get off, which means that mum and dad could be coming back into this room immediately. That scale is going to tip the other way, that the priority belief is now going to be 5 kilos, don't eat the cookie, 2 kilos, eat the cookie. But previously, the information that the child accessed governed the decision to eat the cookie. And 2 minutes later, different information governed the child not to eat the cookie because they had the information that mum and dad were coming. So what we need to do when we're looking at priority beliefs dictating behavior in that moment is, if somebody did something, let's start with something that you've done, because that's kind of easier to look at. If you're saying, I should have done something different, whatever that might be, we need to recognize why you didn't do that. And why you didn't do that is because you had different priority beliefs. So you might have thought, okay, my child's behaving in a certain way. I got really angry and I yelled at my child. You yelled at your child because of the story that was activated in that moment. You had priority beliefs activated in that moment that made you yell at that child. Only when you yelled at the child and you saw the consequences of that, like their look on their face or how you felt afterwards, did you then say, I shouldn't have done that. But you couldn't have done it differently in that moment. And the proof of that is because you didn't. Your mindset triggered a story in that moment, and you didn't have that information, or you didn't have the awareness to change it in that moment, that it was what it was because of the story that got played out, because of the priority beliefs. So rather than roll around in the story of should have, could have, I should have done it differently, what we need to do instead is understand why we didn't. What must I have been thinking to be feeling this way to yell at my child? Because by understanding it, then we can look at changing it, rather than rolling around and I shouldn't have done that and making yourself feel crappy, because the reality is you did do it. And you did it because of the story that was activated in that moment and the priority beliefs you had. So the best thing you can do for yourself is understand what those priority beliefs are so you can change it. Now, when we're looking at somebody else's behavior, we're looking at understanding what their priority beliefs are. So they think through those lenses as well. So what must they be thinking to be behaving this way? Let's try to understand what they did and how they were personalizing that situation for them to feel like that was the priority behavior in that moment. So when we're looking at the world of our children, and I don't want to get into the depths of, criminal behavior or really tough behavior, because they are more in-depth conversations that need a lot more evidence and sensitivity and all of that sort of stuff to help you to kind of use this upgrade on them. It still works, but it's a longer road because we're looking at lots of complexity there. But let's look at your child's behavior, for example. So many times we go, they shouldn't have behaved like that. Instead, we want to be saying, why did they behave that way? We need to get curious about understanding what were they thinking? What were they thinking to feel the way that they did? And what were they thinking in order to decide to behave that way? Because they had a story full of priority beliefs, even though they might know morally not to do what they did, even though they know they will get in trouble for what they did. There was priority beliefs, a priority story that was going on that triggered that response. So rather than roll in the story, they shouldn't have done that, we need to accept the reality that they did and start understanding why, so we can help them to either correct their mindset or find other more productive ways to achieve the goal that they were trying to achieve. So again, these upgrades are simple in terms of what we're saying, but complex sometimes in terms of how we apply them. So, this whole podcast is going to be delving into these in many different ways. And I always welcome, like we will be having, you might have already seen, just trying to think of, yes, you would have already seen one of the interviews that we've had with a parent. If you're wanting to come onto the show and discuss a situation with yourself and your emotions or your child and something that they're doing, I am more than welcome to have those conversations where we can really pull apart these lenses and upgrades and look at what was going on for you and your child and those dynamics and all of those sorts of things. That's what this podcast is going to be about. So if you keep following us, you're going to get to understand these upgrades a lot more and get to know how you can apply them to your life and to your particular situations. And it'll just get easier and easier to keep thinking like this. And you'll just find your whole life will change when you do. So far we've got life is a story of ups and downs to replace right versus wrong. We've got everything has value to replace missing out. We have priority beliefs dictate behavior in any given moment, replacing could have, should have. And then the last one is a big one. When we're saying I am worthless, the upgrade is I am worthy. It's not earth-shattering, right? I can say you're worthy all you like. But if you've got loads of evidence that says I'm worthless, I'm going to have to get you to work hard to look for evidence of your worthiness. And then there's a big difference between self-worth and self-esteem. Self-esteem means to rate. So we're rating ourself against our belief system. So the reality of self-esteem is that it's going to fluctuate. You're going to have its highs and lows. So you're still going to, even if you feel worthy, 100% worthy, you're still going to fluctuate in how good you feel about yourself and how you don't. But it's when we rate ourselves as worthless and we're making value judgments when life isn't going to plan, that's when we need to start recognizing the true value of worth. And when we think about the value of your life and why you are always worthy all of the time, regardless of what's happening in your life, what happens is we start to bring in all of those upgrades together. So we start to recognize that as you are experiencing your life of highs and lows, you are living, learning, sharing, growing, and evolving. And because you are here in existence, having your life, you are contributing to other people around you, that they are able to experience living, learning, sharing, growing, and evolving because you exist. If you didn't exist, they wouldn't learn. They wouldn't have experiences that they have had that shapes them to have highs and lows. So sometimes when we have done something that we regret and we feel bad about, and we say, I feel worthless because of it, it's it's okay to feel like you wanted to be different, because that can be the launching pad for looking at yourself and making changes, because it's not who you want to be. But it doesn't make you worthless, because you are still a contributor to that person's life. You still have been contributing to life. You still will contribute to other people's lives. Their story will keep going. Your story will keep going. And you will continue to live, learn, share, grow, evolve. It doesn't define you when things don't go to plan. It doesn't define your life. It doesn't define your worth. It just means that you had priority beliefs that made you do what you did, and they need to be investigated and changed so that you can feel good about you. That life doesn't come from what you do, like value, your self-worth doesn't come from what you do. It comes from the fact that you're here doing it. Let me say that again. You are not worthy because of what you do or don't do. You are worthy because you are here doing it. And so are your kids. So when we make mistakes, remember upgrade too. There's value in everything. When you've done something to hurt somebody else, there's value in everything. It doesn't mean it was okay morally. It doesn't mean that you should have done it. It doesn't mean that you're exonerated from the consequences of doing that. It just means that worthiness was never defined by your actions. It's just a story that we've been told over the years that we have to get it right for us to be worthy. Now, again, what I've just said can be triggering because of certain situations, and they require deeper conversations because it sounds like I'm saying that people can go around and do anything that they want and they're still going to be worthy. But the reality is that we will feel the discourse of that. And the only reason why people do the things that they do, like the bad things in the world, is because they felt worth less in the first place, because they were running those lenses. So if you've done something, you will feel the conflict within yourself. And it's not about blaming and criticizing and pulling yourself down and punishing yourself. It's about understanding yourself. Where did those beliefs come from that made me do that? And what do I need to do to change? And when we're looking at someone else's behavior, we can do the same thing. What was going on for them? Where was that self-worth component for them that made them behave that way? And what they did was about their beliefs, but your reaction to what they did comes from your beliefs. So this whole forgiveness cycle, whether you're forgiving yourself or forgiving other people, lies in the ability to be able to understand the reality of self-worth and the reality of life's highs and lows, ups and downs, the value in everything, and understanding that our priority beliefs, because of the way the brain is wired, dictates behavior. So I get that these 4 lenses, these 4 upgrades are complicated. And I do a whole course called the Be the Change program and the Awakening the Peaceful Parent Within that goes into deep dive into those lenses so that you're getting lots of different examples of that. But at the moment, I'm just trying to introduce you to a different way of viewing things. And I can't wait to hear some of your comments about some of the insights that you've gotten and the ways that you can look at things differently, because you can apply this to every aspect of your life. But the key, again, is evidence. And when you're looking at that self-worth component, we have to look for evidence of you still being valuable, contributing to people, that even though you might have contributed to someone's pain and you don't like that, it's not about trying to like what you've done. It's not about trying to like your unwanted situations or difficult situations. It's about accepting the reality that these things don't define you. And it's about accepting the reality that even though you might have done something to hurt somebody, their lives are still valuable too, that you haven't ruined a life. The only way that a life can be ruined is if we get stuck in those 4 stressful thinking lenses, that the other person or yourself stays stuck thinking that their life is worth less because of something that's happened to them, instead of using it as an opportunity to live, learn, share, grow, evolve. Even if you don't evolve from this, you're still going to be contributing who you are to another person, and they will learn from you. They will learn from you whether you change or not. They will learn from life whether they change or not. So you've got to decide what you want and who you want to be so that you can become the person that you want to be. And you don't have to dwell in these unwanted situations, particularly if we have, had some things with you and your child. In the parenting experience, this whole thing applies. Highs and lows, ups and downs. There's value in the unwanted. We're learning. We're finding opportunities. We're learning what to do, what not to do. We've got priority beliefs that dictate our behavior left, right, and center. The kids' behavior is dictated by what their narrative is and their story is in that moment. And everybody was worthy throughout the whole thing, that we were all contributing to each other's personal growth, our live, learn, share, grow, evolve story. They were contributing to yours. You were contributing to theirs. And we have to remember that that is the essence of a worthy life, is that you're here doing it, learning, making mistakes, growing from those mistakes, becoming a different person, redesigning your life because of those unwanted experiences. It's all valuable. It's all okay. It's just about kind of sitting there when something's not gone to plan and actually reviewing it and going, okay, what am I going to do next? Okay, so this has been a big podcast, a big episode. I'm very curious to hear how you're taking on these upgrades. I know it's not easy in some situations, and I welcome any kind of feedback that you have as you're trying to perceive them, and I'll do my best to try and answer any of the questions or even just the things you're getting stuck on, because I know that sometimes you can get stuck on that. So make sure you write in the comments how you're perceiving this, how it's helping you in a parental context or just in a situational context or some other aspect of life, because these upgrades really can completely change how you feel about a situation that didn't go to plan for you. So next time you feel stuck in your stressful thinking lenses, wrong path, missing out, could have, should have, worth less, I want you to ask yourself, how can I be seeing this differently? How can I recognize that life is a story of ups and downs? Everything has value. Priority beliefs, mine and other people's, priorities beliefs dictate behavior in that moment. And me and my life is always worthwhile. And remember, in this podcast, we're always looking beneath behavior because there's always more to the story. And maybe today, just check, what must I be thinking to be feeling this way and to be responding this way? See you next time. Come and join in the conversation by following Beneath Behavior on socials for daily tips, insights, and support. See you there.